Good morning.
The Garfield movie starts with the cat who hates Mondays ordering a pizza and receiving it via a drone. After that, the movie's protagonist starts telling the story of how he met John, his human, and we see the scenes exactly as they were shown in the trailer, where his father leaves him in a wooden crate and promises to come back. But that doesn't happen, and after the rain stops, the frightened Garfield notices that across the street there's a restaurant where lonely John eats pizza, and he sees a little orange cat with huge eyes outside. Touched by the kitten's expression, he lets him in, and then Garfield shows his true nature and devours the pizza and everything else in sight, even though he's still just a kitten. Already outside the restaurant, John says goodbye to Garfield, but when he looks at the kitten, he notices a real river of tears and then decides to adopt the little orange cat.
And that's how I adopted John.
And so begins the story of the Garfield movie, but there's a lot more after that. The kidnapping. John needs to move out of his apartment and moves to a house, where he also adopts a little puppy, Odie, who becomes the orange cat's accomplice. Garfield hates Mondays because it was the day John bathed him and took him to the vet.
Does she need to announce it to the whole office?
The two friends have the habit of raiding, literally the fridge, every midnight, and when they are doing so, a pair of dogs appear inside John's house, who put the two friends in 2 bags and take them to an abandoned mall where they hang the 2 friends upside down. There, a hooded cat frees the 2, and then Garfield discovers that it's Vic, his father, who had abandoned him years before. At that moment, Jinx appears, a psychotic cat who had been part of Vic's gang in the past, but who had been caught and imprisoned when they tried to steal a milk factory in the past. While in prison, Jinx imagined that her friends would try to rescue her, but that didn't happen, and she spent years there until she met Roland and Nolan, the 2 dogs who kidnapped Garfield and Odie. She manages to escape from prison with the duo and then puts her revenge plan against Vic into action, which included kidnapping and torturing the cat's only son, Garfield. So, Jinx makes a proposal to Vic and Garfield where they would have to steal from the same factory where she was imprisoned, a liter of milk for each day she spent in prison, which Garfield accepts since Jinx's henchmen are there and won't let them go until they accept the proposal, and shows that what would happen to them if they didn't accept the proposal. So, the orange cat agrees to work alongside his father even though he just wants to go back home to John. We still have a lot to tell, but if you also like this cat who hates Mondays, comment #Garfield down here so we know. Milk farm. Meanwhile, John wakes up and notices that the fridge is open and there is food on the floor, and both Garfield and Odie have disappeared. He calls the police, but he is number 1046 in the waiting queue, which makes him completely desperate. Poor John. At the same time, Vic, Garfield, and Odie try to board a freight train to get to the milk factory, which everyone else manages to do easily except Garfield. He ends up flying from side to side, as unlike all other cats, the movie's protagonist can't even land on his feet. Shortly after, the trio manages to reach the milk farm and realize that the place is now a family-friendly environment, full of joy and children, but at the same time is surrounded by iron gates and heavy security systems. Outside, the 3 encounter Otto, the bull, who was the face of the company alongside his beloved. However, after not welcoming Garfield, when Odie approaches Otto, he pets the dog and opens up to the group, telling his story, making it clear that he and his beloved were separated after the company changed ownership. The group then promises to free Otto's beloved if he helps them get into the factory so they can steal the 1,600 liters of milk that Jinx demanded, which the purple bull agrees to. So, he provides all the information and the best way to get into the factory, and at the same time starts a heavy training session with Vic and Garfield whenever possible by hitting the father and son, causing a lot of pain to both of them. Reconciliation and invasion. Otto realizes that the only way the plan would work is if Garfield and Vic sorted things out between them, so he ties the 2 to a tree until they resolve it. Vic then, after a while, tells Garfield everything that happened on that night when the orange cat thought he had been abandoned. While Vic rummaged through the trash of a restaurant, he took longer than he thought because of an employee who was on the phone and delayed him. The father then managed to find a small fish to feed his son, but when he returned, he came across the scene of Garfield receiving affection and food from John, things he could barely provide for his little kitten.
Wait here, Junior. I'll be right back.
For this reason, the father let his son and John go together. After all, he knew that this way Garfield would have a much better life than the streets could provide. But even so, he regretted that decision for every day he didn't have his son with him. In this way, Garfield forgives his father, and they both start to have a better relationship, thus beginning the invasion operation of the milk factory. The detail is that it was part of Jinx's plan to notify the company that the 3 animals would try to enter and steal from the company, which is possible thanks to a cat sound translation app to human language used by the farm's security chief, Marge. After infiltrating inside the children's backpacks, the group manages to enter the factory. Inside, Garfield, Vic, and Odie are almost melted, cut, and chopped, escaping narrowly several times, since the factory is an extremely dangerous place. Furthermore, the keys that Otto had informed the three about were not in the usual place, because Marge had removed them from there. The security chief then appears with the keys and reveals that she was responsible for the separation between Otto and his beloved. During the confrontation with Marge, Vic grabs a milk truck and flees, leaving Odie and Garfield behind, and the two are captured and imprisoned. At the same time, Otto tries to enter through the gate that Vic breaks with the truck to try to rescue Ethel, but is prevented by guards with stun guns. Now, we're going to reveal the whole truth about why Vic abandoned Garfield once again. But first, if you're not subscribed to our channel yet, click down below on the subscribe button, okay? The truth about Vic. While in a cage, Garfield met several cats who knew his father, and they all said that Vic always disappeared in the middle of robbery plans because he said he had to visit his son, which Garfield doesn't believe since he had just been abandoned by him once again. John then appears at the animal shelter and manages to take Odie and Garfield home, where the two return to their usual routine, with lots of food and laziness. But when he was about to eat his favorite lasagna, Garfield noticed the tree where his father said he watched him from across the street from John's house. He then stops eating the lasagna and goes to the tree. Upon reaching the top, he came across several marks that someone had made every time they were in that tree, exactly where it was possible to see Garfield's bed. At that moment, our protagonist understood that they were marks that Vic had made every time he visited Garfield without him knowing. So Garfield understands that Vic had left him behind because he had noticed the collar on his neck, almost invisible, that was hidden under his fat. He knew that John would rescue both Odie and Garfield at the animal shelter, as both had collars. The duo then goes to the same abandoned mall where they met Jinx, and there understand that the psychotic cat's plan was always to end Vic's life by throwing him off a moving train off a cliff. The rescue. Garfield then devises a rescue plan for Vic and asks for Otto's help to use his strength to throw him onto the train when it passes, and thus could save his father. Once inside the train, Garfield manages to escape with Vic after an epic battle involving a lot of food and flying delivery drones, and the two jump off the train onto a net that Odie had placed. The problem is that the net ends up throwing them back onto the train, and there, when Roland and Nolan, the two dogs working for Jinx, are about to throw them off the cliff, father and son declare the love they feel for each other. The dogs then refuse to throw the two cats, but the crazy cat pushes the four animals off the train, but shortly after she also falls. And when the five characters are falling to certain death, Otto appears holding a rope and manages to catch everyone, including Jinx, throwing them onto the safety net that Odie had tied. Odie, Vic, and Garfield disguise themselves as a strange hooded figure and make a trade with Marge, handing over Jinx in exchange for Ethel's freedom, who goes straight into the arms of her beloved Otto, and they finally reunite once again. Garfield and Odie return to John's house, and Vic hesitates to enter, but Garfield realizes that he is once again in the tree watching him to see if everything is okay. Garfield then convinces him to be part of the family and to eat all that food with him, and to have all the comfort that a domestic life provides. The movie ends with Garfield's birthday celebration, where all the friends he made during this adventure gather at John's house, including Vic's cat friends, Roland, Nolan, Otto, and Ethel. And thus, Vic starts living with John, Odie, and Garfield, forming a new and very happy family. This was definitely one of the good animated movies I watched this year. It was really worth it. As we know you also enjoy videos about cartoons and animated movies, we're leaving two options for you right now. I heard the video on the left is really good. Check it out!